$5,000 to tell the truth, the message said. No matter how uncomfortable it gets. Marcus Reed stared at the screen a little longer than he needed to, thumb resting against the edge of his phone, the faint hum of an old refrigerator filling the silence of his apartment. Somewhere down the hall his son's soft breathing slipped through the cracked bedroom door, steady, peaceful, untouched by the math of overdue bills stacked on the kitchen counter, untouched by the quiet calculations a father makes when numbers stop adding up. Marcus exhaled slowly, not tired, just measured. The way a man learns to be when reacting too fast costs more than staying still. $5,000 wasn't life-changing money, but it was rent, it was groceries, it was one less apology whispered over a late dinner. He read the message again. No name, no company, just a time, a location, and one condition: be honest, even when it costs you. He almost smiled at that. Because honesty had already cost him more than $5,000 could ever cover. But he typed back a simple, "I'll be there," then set the phone down like it was heavier than it looked. The next evening the restaurant stood on a corner polished to impress, glass walls catching the last light of sunset, the kind of place where the host glanced at shoes before making eye contact. Marcus adjusted the collar of his clean but worn jacket, not trying to look like he belonged, just refusing to look like he didn't. Inside, the air smelled like citrus and quiet money. Conversations low, controlled, every laugh measured. He followed the hostess past tables where people spoke without ever raising their voices, until she stopped at a table near the center, not hidden, not private, just visible enough. "She'll be with you shortly," she said, placing a menu down with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Marcus nodded, sat, and let his hands rest calmly on the table, not fidgeting, not performing, just present. A glass of water arrived, untouched. Minutes passed, not awkward, just slow, like time was watching him too. Then she arrived, heels soft against the floor, posture straight, expression composed. She didn't rush, didn't apologize, she simply took her seat across from him and looked at him like he was a question she hadn't decided to answer yet. "Marcus Reed?" she asked, her tone polite, neutral. "Practice." "That's me," he replied, voice even. She nodded once, glancing briefly at something on her phone before placing it face down. "Let's make one thing clear," she said, folding her hands. "This isn't really a date." Marcus tilted his head slightly, not surprised, just confirming what he already felt in the air. "I figured," he said, and for the first time, something flickered behind her eyes, not amusement, not warmth, just a slight shift. Like the script she expected had already changed by a single line. The room continued around them, glasses clinking, soft music threading through conversations, but at that table, something quieter settled in, something heavier than words. Marcus didn't ask questions, didn't fill the silence, he just sat there. Steady, like a man who had already decided that whatever this was, it wouldn't take more from him than he was willing to give. She did not reach for the menu right away, and neither did he. The waiter hovered for a second longer than necessary before stepping away, sensing something in the air that did not match the usual rhythm of the room. She leaned back slightly, studying him without making it obvious, then asked the first question as if it were part of a survey, not a conversation. "What do you do for a living, Marcus?" Her tone was light, almost casual, but there was a precision to it, like she was measuring more than just the answer. Marcus glanced at the glass of water in front of him before looking back up. "I fix things," he said, simple. She tilted her head a fraction. "That is vague." He nodded once, not defensive. "Heating systems, sometimes electrical, whatever needs fixing." She tapped her finger once against the table, not impatient, just noting. "And that pays enough?" she asked, and there it was, the first cut, clean, quiet. Marcus did not shift in his seat. "It pays on time," he replied. And for a brief second, she looked like she might respond, but instead she moved on, her eyes steady. "Do you have a family?" He paused, not because he was unsure, but because he chose his words carefully. "A son," he said, something softened in the way he said it, barely noticeable, but real. "How old?" she asked. 7. He answered. She nodded, absorbing it like data. "And his mother?" The question landed gently, But it stayed there, waiting. Marcus exhaled quietly, not heavy, just present. She is not around. He said, no bitterness, no explanation, just truth. She watched him a moment longer than before, as if expecting something else to follow. When nothing did, she shifted again. Does that make things harder? Another precise question, another measured pause. Marcus gave a small shrug. Some days, he said, then added after a beat. Some days it makes things clearer. That caught her, just enough to register, but she did not show it. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, elbows near the table but not resting, posture still controlled. Do you ever feel embarrassed? She asked, and this time? The word hung differently, not sharp, not loud, but heavier. It did not belong to the room. Marcus met her gaze without hesitation. About what? He asked, not challenging, just asking for clarity. She did not blink. About where you are in life. She said, plain, direct, no softness left in the question. The conversation around them blurred for a second, not because it stopped, but because it no longer mattered. Marcus let the silence sit, not filling it, not escaping it. He looked down. Briefly, not in shame, just in thought, then back at her, steady. No, he said, simple, unshaken. The answer did not carry pride, did not carry defense. It just was. Something in her expression shifted again, smaller this time, almost invisible, like a calculation that did not return the expected result. She picked up her water, took a small sip, then set it back down carefully, aligning it with the edge of the table as if control over small things could restore balance. Most people would say. Yes, she said, not accusing, just observing. Marcus nodded slightly. Most people are allowed to, he replied, and that made her pause, not outwardly, but somewhere behind her eyes, where questions linger. Longer than answers. Across the room, someone laughed a little too loudly. A fork clinked against a plate. Life continued in its polished rhythm. But at that table, the space between them had changed, not warmer, not colder, just deeper, like the surface had finally broken and something real had begun to show. She did not react right away, and that was the first honest thing about her. Not the questions, not the posture, but the silence that followed his answer. It lingered just long enough to feel unplanned, like something inside her had missed a step. Then she straightened slightly, as if resetting. So you are comfortable with where you are, she said, but this time it sounded less like a test and more like she was trying to understand the rules of a game she did not design. Marcus rested his hands loosely together, fingers interlocked, not tense, not relaxed, just steady. I did not say that, he replied, calm. She watched him closely now, not scanning, not evaluating, just watching. Then what did you say? She asked, softer. Marcus glanced toward the window where the last of the daylight had faded into reflections of the room itself, then back at her. I said I am not embarrassed, he clarified, and something about the distinction seemed to settle differently between them. She leaned back again, but this time her shoulders did not carry the same edge. There is a difference, she said, almost to herself. Marcus nodded once. There usually is, he replied. The waiter returned briefly, offering to take their order. She did not even look at the menu. I will have the chef's special, she said, then glanced at Marcus. You should order something. It was not an invitation, not quite a suggestion, more like an expectation wrapped in politeness. Marcus picked up the menu, scanned it for a few seconds, then closed it gently. Just coffee, he said. The waiter hesitated, then nodded and left. She raised an eyebrow slightly. That is all, she asked. Marcus gave a small nod. That is enough, he said, and again, there was no resistance in his voice, no attempt to prove anything, just a quiet certainty that did not ask for approval. She looked at him differently. Now, not warmer, not kinder, just less certain. You know they are watching, she said suddenly. The words dropped without warning, but not with force, more like a truth that had been sitting between them all along. Marcus did not turn his head, did not scan the room. He simply blinked once, slow. I figured, he said. She studied his face for a reaction that did not come. You are not curious who they are, she asked. Marcus shifted slightly in his seat, not uncomfortable, just adjusting. Not really, he answered. She frowned faintly, the first visible crack in her composure. You agreed to this without knowing who is behind it. She pressed. Marcus met her gaze again, steady as before. I agreed to show up. He corrected, and that answer seemed to land heavier than the question. She leaned forward now, her voice lower, less performative. Do you know what they expect from you tonight? She asked, and for the first time, there was something beneath her words that did not belong to the script, something closer to warning than curiosity. Marcus took a slow breath, not because he needed it, but because he chose to. Something uncomfortable, he said, simple. She held his gaze, searching for doubt, for hesitation, for anything that would make him easier to place, but there was none, just a man sitting across from her, fully aware, fully present, not trying to win, not trying to escape, just choosing how he would exist in a moment that was never designed for him. She leaned back again, quieter this time, her fingers resting still against the table, no tapping, no movement, just stillness. Most people would have walked out by now, she said, almost under her breath. Marcus gave a faint shrug. Most people do not have a 7-year-old waiting at home, he replied, and that was the first time the room seemed to shift in a way no one else could see, because it was not the words, it was the weight behind them, steady, undeniable, and impossible to reduce to a number. On a message screen. The coffee arrived first, placed carefully in front of Marcus as if it weighed more than it did, steam rising in thin, quiet lines that disappeared before reaching his face. He wrapped his fingers around the cup but did not drink, not yet. Across from him, her plate came next, something arranged with precision, colors balanced, portions measured, the kind of meal that looked complete before it was even touched. She thanked the waiter with a small nod and waited until he stepped away before speaking again. They will ask for something more direct soon, she said, her voice lower now, no longer shaped for performance. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Direct how? He asked. She held his gaze for a moment, then looked past him, not at anyone in particular, just toward the room that suddenly felt less anonymous. They want a moment, she said. Something they can use. Marcus let that settle, not surprised, not offended, just aware. And what do you want? He asked quietly. The question was simple, but it did not belong to the script. She blinked once, as if it had not been offered to her before. Not like that, not here. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. She looked back at him, studying him in a way that felt less controlled. That is not part of this, she said, but her tone lacked the certainty it had earlier. Marcus gave a small nod, accepting the answer without agreeing with it. He lifted the cup and took a slow sip, unhurried, unbothered, like the room was not waiting for anything from him, like time had not been placed on his shoulders. A subtle movement near the edge of the room caught her attention, a man shifting in his seat, a phone angled just slightly too high. Another glance from someone who was not trying hard enough to hide it. She noticed because she was used to noticing, but this time it did not give her the same control, it just made the space feel thinner. You could still walk out, she said. The words came softer now, almost like a suggestion she was not sure he would take. Marcus set the cup down carefully, aligning it with the edge of the saucer without looking. I could, he said, and left it there. No explanation, no justification. She leaned forward again, this time without the edge, without the script. Then why are you still here? She asked, and the question carried something new, not pressure, not judgment. Something closer to curiosity. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, not her clothes, not her posture, but the space behind her eyes where the questions lived. Because I said I would be, he answered, simple, steady. She held his gaze, and for a second, something shifted in her shoulders, something small, like the weight she carried adjusted just enough to be noticed. Even if they ask you to embarrass yourself, she pressed. The words sounded different now, heavier, like she understood it more than before. Marcus did not look away. Depends what you think that means, he said, and that answer stayed there, between them, quiet but firm. She sat back slowly, her hands resting still on the table, no tapping, no movement, just stillness again. But this time it was not control, it was thought, real thought, the kind that takes time. Around them, the restaurant continued as if nothing had changed, glasses lifted, conversations flowed. But at that table, something had shifted. Beneath the surface, something neither of them had planned, and for the first time, she was not sure who the moment belonged to anymore. The request did not come from her this time. It came from the side, quiet at first, a chair shifting, a man standing just far enough to be part of the room and not part of the table. He did not introduce himself, did not need to. His presence carried that same polished confidence as everything else in the space. "We are ready," he said, not to Marcus, but to her. She did not turn immediately, and when she did, it was slower than before, like she already knew what was coming and did not want to rush into it. "Then say it," she replied, her voice even, but something in it no longer matched the tone from earlier. The man gave a small nod and looked at Marcus for the first time, properly this time. "Stand up," he said, simple, direct. Marcus did not move right away, not out of hesitation, but out of choice. He glanced once at the cup in front of him, then at the woman across from him. Her eyes met his, not commanding, not stopping him, just there, present in a way she had not been before. He stood unhurried, pushing the chair back with a soft scrape against the floor. The sound carried farther than it should have, or maybe the room had just grown quieter. "We want you to say something," the man continued, his tone still measured, almost polite, as if that softened what was being asked. Marcus faced him fully now, shoulders relaxed, posture straight, not defensive, not submissive, just steady. "What do you want me to say?" he asked, and the question landed without edge, without resistance. The man's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Tell everyone here who you are," he said. "Tell them the truth, exactly as it is." A few heads turned, not openly, but enough, a shift in attention, a ripple through the quiet rhythm of the room. Marcus could feel it, not the eyes, but the weight of expectation, the kind that tries to shape a moment before it happens. He let the silence stretch just long enough to belong to him, not to them. Then he nodded once, slow, deliberate, and turned slightly, not addressing the entire room, not performing, just existing within it. "My name is Marcus Reed," he said, his voice calm, clear, carrying without needing to rise. A few conversations paused, forks hovered mid-air. He did not look at anyone in particular, just ahead. "I fix things for a living," he continued, the same words as before, but they sounded different now, anchored, grounded. "I have a 7-year-old son who thinks I can fix anything, even when I cannot." A faint shift moved through the room, subtle, but real. He did not rush, did not fill the space with more than necessary. "I do not make a lot of money," he added, simple, honest, "but I show up when I say I will." He paused, not for effect, but because the sentence had ended. The man to the side waited, expecting more, something sharper, something smaller, something that could be turned into a moment. "And I am not embarrassed by that," Marcus finished, and that was it. No apology, no self-deprecation, no attempt to shrink himself into something easier to consume, just truth, placed carefully in the space they had tried to control. The silence that followed was different now, not empty, not expectant, but full, like something had been set down that no one knew how to move. The man shifted slightly, as if recalibrating. "That is not quite what we asked for," he said, his voice still smooth, but thinner now. Marcus turned his head just enough to meet his eyes. "It is what I heard," he replied, and there was no challenge in it, no defiance, just clarity. Across from him, she had not moved, not once during his words, her hands still resting on the table, her posture unchanged, but her eyes were different, not scanning, not measuring, just fixed on him, as if, for the first time, she was not trying to understand the moment, but the man inside it. No one clapped, no one laughed, and that was the first sign something had gone wrong for the people who thought they were in control. The man beside the table shifted his weight, adjusting his jacket as if the fabric had suddenly become uncomfortable. "That is not the format we discussed," he said, quieter now, less certain. Marcus did not respond right away. He simply reached for the back of his chair and pulled it in, sitting down with the same calm he had stood up with, like the moment had never belonged to anyone else to begin with. Across from him, she exhaled slowly, almost imperceptibly, but it was there, something releasing, something she had been holding without realizing it. The man glanced at her, expecting reinforcement, expecting direction, but she did not look at him. Her eyes remained on Marcus, steady, thoughtful. "We asked for honesty," she said finally, her voice measured, but no longer aligned with the man standing beside them. He nodded quickly. "Exactly, and we need something more compelling, something real." Marcus looked between them, not confused, just present. "That was real," he said, and there was no emphasis, no insistence, just a statement placed gently in the space. The man's jaw tightened slightly, not in anger, but in frustration, like a plan slipping through his fingers one detail at a time. "People expect vulnerability," he added. "Something uncomfortable, something raw." Marcus leaned back slightly in his chair, not retreating, just settling. "You think honesty has to hurt to be real?" he said, and this time it was not a question, it was an observation. The man did not answer, because there was no place in the script for that kind of response. A few tables nearby had grown quieter now, not because they were watching openly, but because something in the air had shifted enough to pull attention without asking for it. She finally looked away from Marcus and toward the man, her expression unreadable. "That will be enough," she said, simple, final. He blinked, caught off guard. "We still have time," he insisted. "We can push further." She shook her head once, not sharply, just clearly. "No." The word landed softly, but it did not move. He hesitated, searching her face for the version of her that had agreed to this, the version that understood the value of a moment shaped for an audience, but that version did not respond. After a second, he nodded, tight, controlled, then stepped back, fading into the room the same way he had emerged, leaving the table quieter than before. Marcus picked up his coffee again, now lukewarm, and took a small sip, unfazed, as if none of it had required anything extra from him. She watched him for a moment, longer this time, not analyzing, not questioning, just observing. "You knew," she said finally, her voice lower now, stripped of performance. Marcus set the cup down gently. "I knew enough," he replied. She leaned forward slightly, her hands still resting on the table, but closer now, less guarded. "Most people would have tried to give them what they wanted," she said, not accusing, not praising. "Just stating." Marcus gave a small shrug. "Most people are trying to leave with something," he answered. She held his gaze, something shifting again behind her eyes, something quieter, deeper. "And you are not?" she asked. Marcus paused for a moment, just a moment, then shook his head slightly. "I already have what I need," he said, and that was the sentence that changed everything, not because it was loud, not because it demanded attention, but because it did not. It simply existed, solid and unmoved, in a space that had been built to make people feel smaller. And across from him, for the first time that night, she did not have a question ready. She just sat there, looking at him, as if she had just realized the moment was never about testing him at all. The silence between them did not feel empty anymore. It felt deliberate, like something had settled into place that neither of them wanted to disturb too quickly. Marcus reached for his cup again but did not drink this time. He just held it, letting the warmth that remained fade slowly into his hands. Across from him, she sat still, her posture no longer rigid, no longer composed for observation, but simply there, present in a way that did not require control. "They offered you $5,000, she said finally, her voice quieter than before, not testing, not probing, just stating something that now sounded different in her own ears. Marcus nodded once. "That is what the message said," he replied. She studied his face, searching not for reaction this time, but for understanding. "And you would have taken it?" she asked, not accusing, just curious. Marcus considered the question for a moment, not because it was difficult, but because he treated it like it mattered. "I showed up," he said, and that was his answer, not avoidance, not deflection, just clarity. She let out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh, but not quite. "That is not the same thing," she said, and there was something softer in it now, something closer to herself than the version she had been playing earlier. Marcus gave a slight nod. "No, it is not," he agreed, then added, "but it is where things start." She looked at him differently again, not as someone being evaluated, but as someone she had not Expected to meet someone who did not fit into the structure she had trusted for so long. "Do you know who arranged this?" she asked, and this time the question was not part of anything else, it was hers. Marcus shook his head slightly. "No," he said, then paused before adding, "but I have a guess." She raised her eyes, just enough to show interest. "And you stayed anyway?" she said, more to herself than to him. Marcus set the cup down carefully, aligning it again without looking. "I do not leave just because something feels off," he said, simple, steady. "Not when I said I would be there." She leaned back slowly, her eyes drifting for a moment toward the rest of the room, where everything still looked the same, polished, controlled, predictable, but it no longer felt that way to her. Something about it now seemed thinner, like the surface had cracked just enough to reveal what sat underneath. "Most people protect themselves first," she said, almost quietly. Marcus gave a small shrug. "I do too," he replied, and that made her look back at him, because it did not match what she had just seen. "That did not look like protection," she said. Marcus met her gaze again, steady as before. "It was," he said, "just not the kind you are used to." The words stayed there, not sharp, not confrontational, just present, and she felt them, not as criticism, but as something closer to truth, something she had not considered in a long time. "Then what do you protect?" she asked, softer now, and this time there was no audience in the question, no structure, no expectation, just a quiet need to understand. Marcus did not answer right away. He looked past her for a second, not at the room, not at the people, but somewhere further, somewhere smaller, more personal, then back at her. "The way my son sees me," he said, and that was it. No elaboration, no explanation, just a sentence placed gently in front of her, and something inside her shifted in a way she could not immediately name, not dramatic, not overwhelming, just a subtle, undeniable change, like a line she had drawn years ago had quietly moved without her noticing. And for the first time that night, she was not thinking about what came next, she was thinking about what had just happened, and why it felt like it mattered more than anything she had planned. She did not speak right away after that, and this time the silence did not feel like a gap to be filled, it felt like something she was holding carefully, turning over in her mind as if it might break if she moved too quickly. Marcus did not interrupt it, did not offer anything more, he simply sat there, present, steady, allowing the moment to exist without trying to shape it. The restaurant continued around them. But it no longer felt like the same place, not to her, not anymore. She glanced down at her hands resting on the table, then slowly drew them back into her lap, a small shift, but one that changed her posture entirely, less guarded, less controlled, more real. "My father used to say something like that," she said finally, her voice quieter now, not directed at him so much as spoken into the space between them. Marcus watched her, not intruding, just listening. "He said people do not remember what you achieve," she continued, her eyes no longer fixed on him, but somewhere past his shoulder, somewhere in memory. "They remember how you show up." She paused, just long enough for the words to settle. "I thought I understood that," she added, almost to herself. Marcus gave a slight nod, not agreeing, not disagreeing, just acknowledging. She looked back at him then, and this time there was no distance in it, no calculation, just something closer to honesty. "I set this up," she said, and the words did not come with pride or shame, just truth. Marcus did not react the way most people would have, no surprise, no shift in posture, just a single, quiet breath. "I figured you might have," he said, simple. She studied him, waiting for something else, something sharper, something that would match the structure she had built, but it did not come. "You are not upset?" she asked, and now there was something unfamiliar in her tone, something almost uncertain. Marcus shook his head slightly. "No," he said, then added after a moment, "I just wish you did not need to." And that landed heavier than anything else that night, not because it accused her, but because it did not. It simply saw her in a way she had not expected to be seen. She looked away again, this time not toward the room, but down, her fingers tightening briefly against each other before relaxing again. "I wanted to see what people would do," she said. What they would say when they thought no one really mattered. Marcus leaned back slightly, his expression unchanged. And did you? He asked. She let out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh, but there was no humor in it. Yes, she said. I saw exactly what I expected. She paused, then looked back at him. Until now. And that was the first time her voice carried something she had not planned, something unscripted, something real. Marcus did not respond right away. He let the moment sit, not claiming it, not shaping it, just allowing it to be what it was. She held his gaze for a second longer, then nodded once, as if confirming something to herself, something that had shifted without permission. The money is yours, she said, her tone returning to something steadier, but not colder, just clearer. Marcus looked at her, not surprised, but thoughtful. That was not why I stayed, he replied. She gave a small nod. I know, she said, and for the first time, that acknowledgement felt complete, not transactional, not part of any arrangement, just understood. The weight of the night settled differently now, not as something to capture or control, but as something that had already done its work, quietly, without asking for attention. And as they sat there, neither of them rushed to end it, because for once, neither of them felt like they were in a moment that needed to be managed. Marcus did not reach for the money when she said it. He did not even glance at the envelope the man had quietly placed at the edge of the table sometime during the silence. It sat there now, untouched, like it belonged to a different version of the night, one that no longer existed. He looked at her instead, steady, thoughtful, as if weighing something that had nothing to do with numbers. You should keep it, he said finally, his voice calm, not dramatic, not performative, just clear. She blinked once, the response not matching anything she had expected. You earned it, she replied, almost instinctively, as if that was the rule she had always followed. Marcus gave a small shake of his head. That was never the deal I agreed to, he said, and there was no judgment in it, no rejection, just truth. She leaned back slightly, studying him again, but this time there was no distance in it, only curiosity, only something quieter. Then what was the deal? She asked, softer now. Marcus glanced briefly toward the window where the reflection of the room had fully replaced the outside world, then back at her. To show up, he said, simple. And I did. She held his gaze, and for a second, something in her expression shifted in a way she could not control, something that did not belong to the version of her that ran companies and controlled outcomes, something smaller, more human. You are walking away from $5,000, she said, not as a challenge, but as a realization. Marcus gave a slight shrug. I am walking home, he corrected, and that was the moment everything settled, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. She looked down at the envelope, then back at him, and for the first time, it did not feel like power, it just felt like paper. What do I do with it then? She asked, and the question sounded different now, not because of the words, but because of where it came from. Marcus stood slowly, pushing his chair back with that same quiet control. That part is up to you, he said, and there was no lesson in it, no instruction, just space. He reached for his jacket, slipping it on without rush, without hesitation, like a man who had already finished what he came to do. She watched him, not trying to stop him, not trying to extend the moment, just taking it in, as it was, without shaping it, without owning it. Marcus, she said, and it was the first time she said his name without a script behind it. He paused, turning just enough to look at her. Thank you, she added, and this time the words did not sound like closure, they sounded like recognition. Marcus gave a small nod, nothing more. Then turned and walked toward the door, not fast, not slow, just steady, the same way he had walked into the room, the same way he had sat, the same way he had stood, consistent in a way that did not ask to be noticed. Outside, the night air was cooler, quieter, the city moving at its own pace, unaware of what had just shifted inside. He pulled his phone from his pocket, checking the time, calculating how long it would take to get home. Not to the apartment, but to the small room where a 7-year-old boy believed his father could fix anything, and for the first time that night, Marcus allowed himself a faint smile, not because of what he had avoided, not because of what he had gained, but because of what he had kept. Back inside, she remained seated, the envelope still resting where it had been placed, untouched, the room slowly returning to its rhythm, conversations picking back up, glasses clinking, everything appearing normal again. But it was not for her. She reached for the envelope, held it for a moment, then set it back down, not opening it, not counting it, just letting it sit there. As something she no longer needed to define the moment. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, composed, successful, unchanged on the surface. But something behind her eyes had shifted, something quieter, something she could not measure, and as she sat there, she realized something she had not expected to learn that night. He did not raise his voice, he did not prove anything, he did not take what was offered, he simply showed up, and somehow that was enough to change what she believed about people, about value, about what could not be bought. And in the silence that followed, she understood, not everything that matters needs to be won, some things only need to be seen.